Today we're talking about consent and the Tantric approach to consent, and I'm joined by experienced Tantra teacher Morgan Arundel. Morgan, welcome.
Thanks, Vivian.
Can we kick off by asking, what is consent?
Sure. Consent, generally speaking, is about identifying and communicating our personal boundaries. So communicating what is comfortable for me or what is not comfortable for me. And in any kind of intimate interaction. So most often we talk about touch because that's an intimate interaction. And specifically in any kind of sexual interaction, of course, that would be considered probably the most intimate of interactions. And it's something that we communicate in different ways. So you can communicate it through body language. If you think about when you see someone, you first make eye contact, and then if they kind of hold the eye contact, that means maybe I can go further. I can offer them a smile, and if you offer them a smile and they reply back, then it's kind of you're getting these body signals or cues to initiate further actions that would lead to a deeper interaction with another person, and also it's communicated verbally. So you can actually literally say, can I do this, or would you mind doing this, or and you communicate it like that.
And what makes it so important?
Well, if we are very clear of our personal boundaries and we communicate them well to another person clearly, then it means that our interaction can be harmonious. It can be one that is fulfilling the kind of the needs that we have that are relevant to that particular moment in time, to how open you are, relaxed you are, willing you are in that particular moment, and it just basically leads to more fulfilling and harmonious interactions with another person.
And do there tend to be differences in expectations or in behaviour between men and women?
Yeah, it is actually, because here we need to take into account a little bit this dynamic between the masculine and the feminine. They have different qualities, and the way, for example, for a woman, first of all, physically there is a difference. A woman needs to feel safe if she's in an intimate, interaction, and to be able to kind of open up and to relax into that situation. But also emotionally, mentally, if we think about you want to go deeper, to be more intimate, it's kind of an opening up, become vulnerable. And so, as I said, for a woman, she needs to feel safe, she needs to feel relaxed for that. And a man needs to know how to manifest his power and how to manifest himself so that he knows what is right and what is appropriate, and what is going to lead to an experience that would be very fulfilling and lead to something that's deeper. You can't kind of force an opening. So, if a man has a kind of a more directional, penetrative type of approach, physically, mentally, subtly, then he needs to feel that that's the right moment for that. And then for the woman, she needs to feel more relaxed and safe, so that she's more open. And with that, you can play with this dynamic between the masculine and the feminine that can lead to deeper experiences.
And presumably people have to learn how to communicate to be more honest or brave. What is it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you need to be a bit clear in yourself what you want and what's appropriate for that moment, what you need in that moment. And then, just knowing that you have the right to do that and the choice to do that. It's your responsibility, actually, to communicate that to one another. Often we joke that, we're not mind readers. I can't, really see and know what it is that you're thinking or feeling. That's true to a certain extent. And so it does help a lot if we communicate that. And I think the idea here is that we should recognise that we do have a kind of freedom and a choice to do that, and in some way a responsibility to do that. Yeah.
So what are the consequences of consent working and not working?
If you haven't communicated those boundaries very well, then that could lead to an interaction that makes someone uncomfortable, makes them unpleasant. or is an unpleasant experience, or even could be considered an abusive behaviour. It could go that far. Maybe even a person might feel they've been taken advantage of. So all these kind of things could arise if they feel that there wasn't consent kind of given for an interaction.
So why has the need for consent surfaced now? Why is it so prevalent in society?
Yeah, it's true that we do hear about it much more now, and I think there are a few factors in that. First of all, we are living in a society where there's a lot of individual freedom, and even from the perspective of personal rights, individual rights, it can be considered that consent is recognising that I have a right and a freedom to choose how I want people to treat my body and how I want my body to be seen and my being to be seen. So that's kind of one thing. I think a second factor is that we do live in a more multicultural society. So we do see what's appropriate in one culture might not be appropriate in another culture. And if you were just to take your behaviours from one culture to another, that could lead to completely inappropriate and unwelcomed behaviours. And so where we see that a little bit more. But I think the biggest reason why we see it now is because in our modern society, we promote the rational reasoning thinking much more over our emotional intelligence. And this has led to us to approach things in a very mental way. And there's problems with that, because if we just rely too much on this very linear thinking, we end up with problems with or very superficial ways to understand a situation. For example, we might say, well, I've done it like that before, therefore I can do it again. That's reasonable. But
it worked in one situation with one person.
Yeah, therefore it's going to work with this person or with this different situation. Yeah, or I've seen someone else do it, and therefore I can do it. And of course you can think of many situations where that's not going to work out. I think now in modern times, this is a big problem which has been amplified a lot by technology. For example, the thinking of, well, I've seen someone else do it and therefore I can do it. Think about the disastrous effect that pornography has had on this, because now it's so readily available due to technology, and you have a 13-year-old boy there who's full of hormones looking at quite extreme practices and pornographic things, and then going and thinking that he can just do that to his 13-year-old girlfriend. And so you can see that can lead to disastrous consequences.
And then the girlfriend thinking she has to conform.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps thinking that, that's what I'm supposed to look like when, I've got 3 guys on top of me and, doing all these things to me. I'm supposed to be screaming in pleasure like this. And so we get all sorts of, it's fake, basically, and exaggerated. And so if we go with this thinking, well, that's what I've seen, therefore I can do that, then that's going to put us completely out of touch with reality, and can lead to disastrous consequences for interactions that would be not just unpleasant, but could be traumatic, genuinely traumatic experiences.
So what's coming to mind is this kind of programmed mind that we can have. Through modern technology, we're open to so many influences now, and to have that programmed mind, which doesn't relate to any moral or ethical standards in society. It's just, I've seen it, and now I'm going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, you've highlighted something that's very important. I think it's a key understanding in this idea of consent, which is that when the approach is very mental, then it's somehow disconnected from the emotional and empathic connection to what's actually going on in the other person. And the morals and ethics are actually, they're not a mental process. It's true, they can also be mentalized and put into a structure, but it's about knowing inside what is good, what is a good action in this moment for this particular person in this particular moment. Another thing that technology has done to make this even worse is that, you know, our lives have become more virtual, right? We interact on social media, and we've actually become less inept at just interacting in person.
Naturally.
Yeah, and, you know, even the recent period of everything going online and has exacerbated that. So we're out of touch, and people have become poor at communicating, poor at interacting closely with another person, and so this has exaggerated this gap between the mind and the emotions. So yeah.
So consent has to come in and be a starting point for filling that gap.
Yeah, and it has to be done in that situation. It has to be formalized for that to work. And so we have now models that have been created to formalize harmonious human interaction. I mean, think about that. That's where we're at right now. We're at a place where we're so disconnected from ourselves emotionally, and we have such a lack of empathy, a disconnection from ourselves, from what our real feelings and needs are, and a disconnection from being able to feel that in another person. That we need, a formal structure to guide us in how to have a proper and harmonious interaction with another human being. Yeah. So that's where we're at, and there are models that exist. There is one that is often referred to and used by people who are involved in therapy, where there's touch. Or where they're, people who are sex workers, or, coaching in healing, in sexual education and healing and this kind of thing, or simply people who are doing body work, massage and this kind of thing. Or people such as Tantra workshop facilitators, or these kind of things, who are guiding people in experiences where there are touch and more intimate interactions. And that is, it's called the wheel of consent, and that is a structure or a model, we could say, about clarifying human interaction. It basically does it by looking at two different things. One, if you are involved in some kind of intimate interaction, either you are the one who is giving it or you're receiving it. Mm-hmm. And then the second component is that it's something that you're doing for you, or you're doing it for the other person. So that would actually leave us with four possibilities. I'm receiving something and it's being done for me, or I'm receiving something and it's done for the other person. Or the other two options would be, I'm doing something and I'm doing it for me, or I'm doing it for the other person. To give you an example, if you ask me for a massage, I'm the one who's offering, so I'm giving. I can give you a massage or a shoulder rub, but I can do it for me because I just want to get closer to you and I like you, and that's just an excuse for me to touch you and get a bit closer. So it's really just for me. Or I'm doing it for you because you have a pain in your shoulder and you asked if you could have a rub, and I'm doing it because it's relieving some pain. So you can see how this model kind of works. Yeah.
Clarity seems to be the key word here.
It is, and the models are good from that point of view, and exactly that's how the Western mind works, or this rational mind works. We need to understand something, we need it to be explained to us. Give me the rational process here, that makes sense, then I can adopt it as a behaviour. So you see where, again, it's this over-reliance on the rational process. But it brings clarity. That's one of the benefits of it. This, of course, is the benefit of and the beauty and the value of rational thinking. However, it's only one part of the way that we understand and relate to this world, and the other is the emotional part, or the intuitive part, or the deeper, the heart's wisdom, we might say, as opposed to this knowing of the mind. So these models are very good at bringing clarity. And there's another thing that they also help is they help clarify the intention behind it. Like I gave that example, and so it brings your awareness to that. Actually, am I doing this because I want to do it, or am I doing it because really I'm, altruistically offering this gesture to another person? It's a true giving, And so I found them very helpful in clarifying the intention behind your interactions with another person.
So we may all have some hidden intentions that we have to come to terms with.
Yeah, sure.
So there's quite a lot of self-knowledge in this process.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is indeed. And that awareness is a good thing, by all means. It's bringing a great clarity to it. The problem with it is, though, that it does formalise the approach. And when we formalise something, it relies too much on the approach being mental. So even if we could say it does bring an awareness there to the intention behind something, it's not implying that we need to do some work there to get to that conclusion in another way. We rely on a model, and there's the danger. Any model, they have the same trap. They explain a reality beautifully, but then if you rely on the model, you become limited by it. And we need to arrive to that same place, that same understanding in another way.
Because of course a boundary can also be a limit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Morgan, what is the tantric perspective then on consent?
Yeah, so Tantra can give us a very good perspective. The path of Tantra is one of transformation. So it's a path of moving from a more limited, defined way of being to one that is more expanded, more unlimited, universal, cosmic. And so we're always looking for experiences or ways to approach experiences that will take us out of our limits, beyond our boundaries, so to speak. In the yogic and tantric tradition, those boundaries that we were talking about before are essentially the sum of what we believe to be, the sum of all our limitations that are maintained by the structure called the ego. Or in the yogic tradition, it's known as ahamkara. It's this sense of the individual self. And essentially that ego structure is what's contained within it is everything that we are familiar with, is everything that's known to us, is everything that we are comfortable with.
This is who I am.
Exactly, this is who I am. And we identify with that fully. And the spiritual practice, like any genuine spiritual practice actually, is to take us beyond that and say, actually, you are more than that. You are not just this limited, defined self. You are something which is eternal and infinite. And so the practices are to lead us towards that. So a typical tantric practice would be then something that has a lot of intensity in it that would take us out of that comfort zone, out of that familiar zone. Now, we were speaking about the boundaries that we communicate through consent. Because the problem is this: if we only have experiences which are within that comfortable zone, then there's no transformation. So we need to have experiences that are outside of that.
You just stay as you are.
You stay as you are.
No shift.
Yeah. So if we get too mentalized with this process and we just think, okay, I just need to have experiences that I'm comfortable with and that I'm okay with from that point of view, then there's no transformation. You will just simply stay having experiences that you already are familiar with, because transformation happens in the unknown, in the realm of the unknown. So in Tantra, we're always looking for intense experiences. And I can give you a simple example. In a workshop, we might do a simple practice of embracing another person. Now, when you give someone a hug, there's that moment where it feels a little uncomfortable. It's like, okay, now is good. and it depends if you're
How long's it been?
Yeah, how long's it been? And then the mind comes, okay, is it a little bit too long? Or, and there's that moment. And that's when you usually kind of break it off. So one practice we might do is simply to have a bell that goes after 1 minute, and then you take an embrace and you hold that embrace until the bell goes. And then that little moment of uncomfortable moment comes, but then because you're both going into that experience with that intention of what the practice is, then you abandon to that and you let go to that and you open up to what's actually happening, and then you start to feel, and then you feel the other person. And then it starts to be this beautiful, empathic and affectionate exchange. You feel the heart of the other person. And so you have a much deeper experience. So there you've gone beyond a boundary, so to speak. Another example would be eye gazing. This is a classic practice that we might do in a tantric workshop or in a retreat, where you're just looking into one another's eyes, and normally you wouldn't hold eye gaze with someone for very long, unless it was someone very close to you. And in this kind of like in practices, you might do it to someone you don't know, they might be even a complete stranger. And again, you hold that gaze, and that becomes a very intense experience because it's an intimate experience. You're opening yourself there. And again, if you go just to where you get uncomfortable, then you'll stop, and there'll be nothing new gained in that experience. There'll be no depth in that experience. It'll just remain within your comfortable, familiar zone. But if you go a little beyond that, then it becomes something completely new. You start to see that person in whole new ways. You start to have intuitions about them. You start to have empathic feelings, maybe even feel how they are as a person, how they are in their soul. You start to have even extraordinary experiences. It maybe brings up all sorts of emotions in you. And that becomes a very transformative experience. So you see, from the Tantric point of view, we need to have experiences. We are looking actually for experiences that take us out of those boundaries. So we can't just stay within those boundaries. And sometimes, sort of how we generally defined consent before was saying communicating what those boundaries are so you kind of stay within them. So we need to find a way of dealing with that situation. If we want transformation, we need to find a way of approaching that boundary that's healthy, because on the other hand, you can't just say, well, just do any experience then. And some people do that, and that can lead to even traumatic experiences. Just do anything. And that's an exaggerated approach to a tantric practice. And then on the other hand, you have it where stay within what's comfortable for you, and of course that doesn't lead to any transformation.
And of course, people are all very different in terms of their levels of empathy, their sensitivities, awarenesses.
Yeah.
And you'll have a workshop or a retreat with very different people all in one room. How do you approach that?
Well, we basically approach it by, first of all, hopefully they understand what's going on. We've provided a framework there, which is one for having different kind of experiences. So to begin with, it's very good to clarify the intention. That's where the model helps, and just simply the understanding of it in a kind of rational way helps. So we're here to transform. We're here to have different experiences. So they know it's in that place, in that it's supported by that framework. And then the second thing that we would do is to highlight what's really important, or what is truly giving consent, which is not the mind but the heart. And one of the key qualities of the awakened heart is empathy. Empathy is that extraordinary ability to feel how the other person is feeling. It's to take the perspective from another person's perspective. And so we encourage people to, first of all, to connect with themselves. And very often that's why you'll hear in a Tantra workshop or in a retreat, okay, now focus in the heart, take a few moments to center yourself. And we say that not just because it sounds nice and it's relaxing, but we genuinely need that person to be connected to yourself, not to your mind, not to the ego, not to those boundaries which are maintained by in a protective way, in a defensive way by the ego, but to what you really need so that you can transform. Because what you need and what those ego boundaries are two different things. So maybe an experience that is a little frightening and a little uncomfortable for you is exactly what is needed for you to transform.
So when people tune in with their hearts, do they then become aware of what they need in that moment?
Yes, yeah, exactly. You're much more in touch with it. And as I said, empathy is the key kind of quality there, because then you're feeling, what does the other person need? So what do I need and what does the other person need? And if you have a clear feeling of those things, then there's no need for any consent. Consent is given there, any formal consent, I should say. The consent is felt, it's given. You know exactly what's appropriate, you know what's perfect, you know how far things can go, to lead to a very beautiful, transformative and healthy and harmonious experience. Yeah.
That's a very different perspective, thinking about what another person needs, because the kind of ego's default is always about survival and what do I need next? What's my next thing that I'm going to need?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the limitation on formalizing something like this is that it can become mental. And of course, the mind doesn't know what's right for you. The heart does. Yeah. So in that situation, if you listen to that kind of ego boundary, it might keep you away from a transformative experience. But the heart will never do that. It will never keep you out of an experience that is a healthy, transformative experience for you. And when it comes to our sexual or erotic interactions, the heart will never consent to a sexual interaction. It will always and only consent to one which is infused with love and with intimacy and with deep caring for one another and with eros. Whereas the mind looks, we look for pleasure, we look for instant gratification, the ego looks for these things, but the heart will never do that. So if we are able to cultivate the wisdom of the heart, then we can move into a much deeper way of relating to one another. And that's exactly what we would encourage and promote and try to teach in all of our tantric teachings, workshops, retreats. Yeah.
Morgan, thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. At Tara, our mission is to make genuine spiritual knowledge available for all those who aspire for spiritual development and transformation. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.